This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
Hey, you wanna help me by just you can just start like a low chant while
Because I see the title, episode of Doom, so you'll
Yeah, I'm gonna sacrifice Bob.
What?
Yeah.
Why are we sacrificing Bob?
Because it's the episode of Doom. I'm gonna pull his heart out right here on the show.
Whoa, hold on.
Right through his chest.
We cannot commit murder on the show, even for entertainment purposes.
But it's a sacrifice. It's a religious thing, isn't it covered?
No, not at all. Not in this country. We're in the wrong country for that. Now, if we move the show, maybe...
Careful. I don't know where we move it to. But let's just say, wait, so back up. So it's the episode of Doom, and I can't pull Bob's heart out?
Correct. What you can do is pull out an old episode and tear that apart if you want.
All right, well then do the thing.
All right, cool. And welcome to the 366th episode of the Misdirected Mark Podcast, where tonight we're going to talk about arcs once again. We haven't talked about arcs in about, I don't know, 120 episodes.
Right, so it's like it didn't even exist.
Strangely enough, that was one of the episodes that was on the feed still. It was one of the first ones that got put up there. But then again, I re-released it earlier today, so people could listen to what we did the first time, and then can listen to this one to see how we have changed since then. So it is truly the Arcs Redux episode of
Yes. All right, so no sacrifices.
Yes. My name's Chris.
My name is Phil.
I'm Old Man Logan.
Hey, everybody. Well, we got this new fancy stream overlay going on.
Yeah, yes. We're running some labs here.
Labs. We're learning new things. There might be a new Twitch channel for Misdirected Mark in total in the future, which is why if you're watching the stream, you'll see that there's like a streaming schedule thing up there. There is nothing except for this show on it and like some various hints at other things coming.
We got some ideas all around.
A few ideas all around.
We do have a few ideas.
Yeah, all around.
Yeah.
By the way, for those asking, my mic is correctly pointed this time.
Yes.
Okay, and I think mine is good. Can Phil cut a rope bridge in half?
I mean, I could turn myself up.
I could. I always have a pair of safety shears on me when playing with rope.
Always a pair of safety shears on you?
When playing with rope.
Yes.
Yes, that makes sense. That's only good practices.
That's
right?
just safety
practice.
first.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I am probably now not low because I turned myself up a bit. All right, let's see. What are we doing now? We should probably move on to announcements. No, one thing.
No, one thing.
One thing?
Who's one thing?
Who's one thing?
Bob, you're one thing.
You're first.
One thing.
You're on the list first, so.
I'm on the list first. It's amazing. So I've been doing some wellness planning. Had a great therapy session on Thursday with Michelle, and we had a great conversation. And essentially, while I was on and up, I decided that it was time to start pushing some things forward. One of which is that my physical health has been affecting my mental health, because I've got this problem with a tooth that I'm finally going for a root canal on the 31st next week. By the time you hear this, it'll be like the day before my root canal, or the day of, whichever.
Whoa. Do we need to schedule a backup, Bob, if you're having a root canal on the day of the show?
No, day after the show.
Do we still need to schedule a backup, Bob, for that?
No.
Okay.
No, I'll be good.
Root canal. He's getting a root canal and they're coming to the show? Like, that doesn't sound like a good idea.
No. If I was getting a root canal, I probably wouldn't be coming.
Bob would be high like a kite.
That would be fun.
That would
actually.
be fun. But so I get a root canal on the 31st, and my shoulder has been, just a point of contention for a long time, and it all stems from my desk at home. So I'm finally pulling this trigger. I bought a new desk.
Yeah.
It's getting delivered this week. And then next week after the root canal, I'm going to tear my room apart, get rid of the old desk, and put the new desk in.
After the root canal?
After the root canal.
You're going to hate that new desk just based on the pain that you're going to suffer. Phil, what are the odds that he gets that desk put together after that root canal?
The good news is that I
low. I think low.
I'm taking that day off the Thursday after the root canal. So I'll have Thursday to partially recover. But I have Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to get everything torn apart, get my new desk in, and then get everything set up again so that I can log on Saturday night at midnight to work.
To play Minecraft.
No, to work.
To play Minecraft.
To play Minecraft
and play
and work.
Minecraft.
I'll be there.
It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah.
So it can be both.
Well,
Yes.
it is because his alarm goes off during the game,
Yeah.
and then he's like, "All right," he's like,
Oh.
"I
Logging to
gotta,"
work.
he's like, "I gotta log off for a second, and then
Yeah.
he comes back.
So yeah, I got the plan going there, and I'm deep in planning for my new tattoo. So you'll be hearing more about that as we go forward.
That's sweet.
Yay!
We should stream that.
That would be
What?
interesting.
Which
but-
thing?
His tattoo.
My tattoo.
I mean, we could.
Just go with him.
Yeah.
We filmed him when he got his
You-
hair.
Well, we
my
can actually
haircut.
stream it because from Patreon I can just stream it, so
There
all
you
the
go.
patrons can see it.
Yeah.
Although that would be we would have to figure out how to be.
I don't think
entertaining.
we do the whole tattoo. Maybe we just like show up towards the
Yeah.
end and like get to see them like wipe it down and stuff.
Well, if
Yeah.
we're smart, we'll show up early, film some of it, like him getting inked, and then show up at the end and be like,
Go play some games.
yeah,
We-
because
There you
on
go.
his arm, in fact. Why not?
no, I'm just saying like you and I could go find a Starbucks, play some
Yeah,
games, and then
yeah,
come
yeah,
back
yeah.
and like,
Yeah, there you go.
check them out.
So that's my one thing. Chris, what about you?
I went to a game cafe called Gathering Game this past week again. It's the second time I've been there. I love game cafes. I think game cafes are great. So you go in there, you pay $3, you can play whatever's on the shelf, and they have a lot of really good games. So we played Tiny Towns and they played Terraforming Mars.
And you love Terraforming Mars.
I do. Although I really want to get my hands on a copy of Raiders of the North Sea at some point. If you listen to Mo Tusino, the tabletop bellhop, and Deanna, and Sean, right? Sean.
Yep.
I always think of him as Dark Elf X because that's what he is in the chat room. But they did a QCC recap on the last episode, and they talked a bunch about Raiders of the North Sea. Mo said some nice things about me. Thank you, Mo. I greatly appreciate that. Anyways, Gathering Game. It's a game cafe. I really enjoy it. It's kind of in this part of town that was down for a long time. It's now starting to come back around.
Yeah, that neighborhood's what you call it. It's nice that neighborhood's coming around.
It's aside from the game cafe, like on the same block across the street, there's a place called Freddie J's. It's a pretty good barbecue place, and there's a bookstore like right across the street next to that also. And then right next to it is a place called Sweetness 7, which is a wonderful cafe for breakfast and whatnot. And around the corner from that, attached to it is a place called Tabernacle, which is this nice, I guess, sort of hippie-ish bar and restaurant, which I really have enjoyed. So it's a really cool little neighborhood.
I'm gonna recommend you go old school and hit Gruccio's for a sandwich one day.
I
You
know,
will
right?
Not be disappointed.
Gruccio's is right there also.
That place has been like an Italian deli in that neighborhood forever. Like it's like an institution.
If you're local, we're going to be down there on Thursday. If you're listening to this right now, I don't think there's a lot of local people in the chat room.
Well, Jerry's there, but Jerry's at my game.
Yeah, it's true. So, you want to come down and join us? We got me and Jen got year passes, which are it was $40 for 2 people.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So we get 10% off on everything in the store. So
Nice.
anytime we buy coffee or whatever when we're there, which their coffee's pretty good. And any games we purchase there, and we never have to pay now to play any of the games on the shelf.
That's wicked.
Yep, I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
And I don't mind supporting that local business. It's really nice.
No, that's really cool. And that price is really good.
It is. To tell a really neat story about that too is Joe is the owner of the store. His wife's birthday was Thursday, and they had rented out part of Tabernacle for her birthday party. And after we got done playing games at about 9 o'clock, we walked out and went over to Tabernacle to get a bite to eat. Except most of their it's still a relatively new place, and like it's more a bar than a restaurant, and their like food is like written on a chalkboard. Like it's really cool. And the stuff in there is pretty neat. But they were pretty much done for the evening. They didn't really have their kitchen was kind of closed. But Joe offered, said whatever's left over, feel free to help yourself. So we got some pulled pork sandwiches and a salad, and
Delicious.
yeah. So if you're ever in the Buffalo area and you want to check out a cool game cafe, go to Gathering Game. It's nice. Also, the staff there is highly educated about the games that are in there.
That's really good.
Yeah, that's the thing. One of the things that I enjoy about it the most.
Yeah, I mean that's more than just go to play a game. That's have somebody help curate
Yeah,
a night for you.
They actually do events weekly, a couple of weekly actually. Usually they have a Thursday night Learn to Play and a Saturday like tournament or something like that.
I want to do the John Wick, the sommelier. Is the sommelier in? I've never known him not to be in. Do you know the scene?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about now. Phil, what about your one thing?
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I actually took it a little easy last week. So my big thing was Minecraft. Like I gave myself the freedom of not doing a bunch of stuff and feeling guilty about it, just because I was kind of droppish. Like I was a little droppish. I was a little sluggish. So I logged on and played a lot of Minecraft, which was great because the server's like really hopping. Like I think only once in the last week I've logged in and someone wasn't there, like when I was on. So it's actually a lot of fun. Like you just pop in, and I've been working away on my stuff. As cool as some of the stuff I've been doing is, I'm just gonna give a shout out to Gator. Where Gator?
The Gator Dome.
The Gator Dome is amazing.
Is it orange?
No, Eric made this dome, and it's huge. Like it's something like 30. What is it? Like 30 or 40 blocks across or something. It's big.
It's like 30 blocks across.
It's rainbow.
Oh, nice.
But it's swirled.
Oh, interesting.
So, like the math involved in getting this pattern right, like to get it to go all the way up and meet at the top cleanly, and to get all of the colors to arc like on a curve going up.
Yeah.
Like it was no small feat of engineering. Like it is super cool. Like I have just a house. Gator's got the Gator Dome. Like it's awesome. And he's been working on it for like, I don't know, like we've been playing what, this instance is what, 3 weeks old?
Yeah, something like that.
He's been working on it for almost 3 weeks straight. Like logging in at night and putting down stuff. And he's just now getting to build on the inside of it, where like the rest of us have like raced like wickedly ahead of him in the tech curve. But yeah, it's on there. So anyway, I've been just hanging out with everybody, all the awesome peeps that are. Rich is on there, and Savannah, and Jerry joined. So Jerry's now playing. Glenn's gonna log on for the first time tomorrow. Vic's on there. Like the place is hopping.
By the way, Rich is our newest $10 patron.
Oh, has he been titled yet?
Yes, he has. He is the captain of our royal fleet of airships.
Nice.
Yes, well, that would be good because his build of his airship is also wickedly impressive.
It's ridiculously cool looking.
It is. It is a very, very cool build. So yeah, it's all good. I didn't even mention Andy's on there. Like Andy's like the Minecraft mom. Like she takes care of everybody.
The perks of patron membership has its privileges.
It's what's called. It's
access
just
to that.
It's really fun, like just hanging out with everyone. And there's people on different time zones, so you wind up like I'm on there till like 1-ish.
Also, like if you just want to go and talk to people, like the Mumble server that's attached to it, like
yeah,
you can just jump on Mumble and hang out with us.
We just hang out and chat with people sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you don't mind the occasional, like, somebody starts swearing when, like, a creeper shows up or something. You hear, like, F, 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 F.
We are explicit.
Yeah, definitely explicit.
I keep wondering if we're ever going to get a Minecraft stream from that.
You know what? If there's a way to do it, I was going to talk to Schmitty about it, but if there was a way to, like, just broadcast, either one of us just broadcast while we play, or being able to switch out different players while we're playing, like, that would, like, we could do a Minecraft jam.
Yeah, I think it would be cool to have that stream and then have the Mumble chat be the audio that goes with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, that'd be neat. I'd appreciate. I think that'd be cool. I would watch.
It's been really good for me. One, it's community.
Yeah.
So, and it is actually a really cool Minecraft community because everybody shares and everybody helps everybody. So when you need something, or like you're missing a component or something, like people are there. Or I couldn't get something working the other night. Schmitty popped over to take a look at it. Like it's really good. So, anyway, that's my one thing. Been very positive, and I'm still playing. Like I'm still kind of addicted to it.
Yep.
I'm playing tonight. I'll be on after the show.
A couple of things about our. Are we done? Are we done with
That's our one thing.
Yeah. All right. Let's do some announcements let's do our ad first, because it's the important thing. All right. Hit the streets, defend the block. It's a different kind of supers game. In it, you play a street-level superpowered being, not necessarily a superhero, mind you, defending your neighborhood from corruption and villains while still balancing the demands of your day job and paying the rent. You don't have big advertisement deals or action figures, but you have a neighborhood you care about and a team of like-minded
Misdirected, Mark. Word scramble.
A team of like-minded folks
Sorry, Rich.
to work alongside defending it. I mean, you're very much in that Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Matt Murdock feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Hit the Streets, Defend the Block features mechanics for creating your own neighborhood as a group, making a living, breathing map that becomes a tapestry of play. The mechanics for superpowers are flexible without being complex, and there's just enough grit in there to make your character's life hectic and interesting.
Are you ready to hit the streets now? Support the Lost Highway Games team by backing Hit the Streets, Defend the Block on Kickstarter. As soon as you back, you'll get immediate access to the playtest material, so you can start defending your block today. And Bob, Where are we?
We have 7 days to go on this Kickstarter. There are 211 backers, and out of their $1,000 goal, they have reached $3,763.
There we go.
Nice. Very nice. I mean, this game, you read the rules, right?
I did.
And we talked to Rich a couple weeks ago about it.
We did. It's great if you want to play a superhero game that is light, that isn't PBTA, because maybe you've played all your PBTA'd out or something, but still has a good narrative feel.
Yeah, I mean, this has got more of a little bit of I shouldn't say a little bit, a lot of Lady Blackbird influence.
I mean,
it's Rich
how
Rogers.
How
right?
could Rich not?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really like you'll pick it up super quick. The map making thing for the neighborhood's great. You'll immediately, as a GM, you'll have material to go from.
Plus, you've heard us talk about games that use map making.
Yeah, we're huge fans of that. Yeah, the superpowers are low enough that you are definitely street level, but still cool enough that you are definitely still a superhero. Like, it's not like I have like super enhanced strength and acrobatics. I mean, you can have that, but like you can have like minor teleportation. You can have shooting bolt powers and stuff like that. So it's a nice low middle power set, and then very flexible. And I think the rules are pretty cool. So yeah, do it.
So a couple other things. I guess one of the I'll say it here. One of the things that has come up recently is I have resigned from Lake Effect Games. I'm no longer going to be running the QCC.
Yeah, you're just going to come and run games.
Yeah, I'm probably just going to come and play games. So
okay, well then I've got some work for you for Encoded.
Nice. There's nothing.
You're going to be running some Avalon games.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. It's nothing bad. Like it's not like that. There was nothing contentious or anything about the situation. It was just I don't want to do that anymore.
It's a lot of work.
It's one of those things that I've like don't want to do that anymore because I'd rather do other things.
Sure.
So there's that. Other thing, like sometime in the not too distant future, there's going to be a new Misdirected Mark Twitch channel.
Correct. Because
not this one.
Because
there's going to be more shows.
Because your name is in this.
Yeah, because my name is in the thing too. It's Chris MMP. We need just like a Misdirected Mark channel.
Correct. We will be announcing in advance.
Yes.
Like when like we did with everything
talking
else.
About this right now.
Yep. So
it's to be determined. We're not sure exactly when that switch is going to happen yet. A lot of us are busy with our lives, and we're doing this as we can. Next thing, there's forums, but I don't think they're publicly available just yet.
Forums are imminent.
Yeah, we are playing with them currently. Like the hosts of shows are on them.
We are advanced beta testing.
Yeah, we'll probably have some patrons being in these forums sometime in the near future.
Yes, technically.
And actually, there are patrons in the forums now.
I believe technically the phase we're in is user acceptance testing. So
yes.
our subset of users are now checking to make sure everything. It is old school. It is straight up old school forum style.
It's lovely.
It's great. Like it's exactly what you think it is. And I used to be a forums junkie, so I'm all set to just jump back in and do some forums.
So if you want to jump in on the forums, you should find Rob Ebrazato.
Soon it's going to be public. Soon everyone will have access to it. But what it means is that if you aren't a patron but wanted a way to chat with all the hosts, talk about the shows with other people who listen, the forums has all that. The forums has it has a section for every show. It's got some additional sections for games and media and other discussions. Like it's got a little of everything. But you will definitely be able to like just pop into the forums and click into your favorite show and actually like jump onto the thread about that episode, because I believe there's a bot that posts the link to each episode, and then that basically starts a discussion.
No, that's cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I like it because I was posting the episode in there.
I saw a post from a bot. Like it's called like episode bot or something.
Nice.
And it's
That means I don't have to do that.
Yeah, so I think that's what's going to happen. We can check with Rob, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, forums are since Google Plus is gone. I guess that's the thing again.
We're all going back. Thanks, Google.
Thanks, Google.
I don't know. In retrospect, maybe it's a better idea.
It might be a better idea.
I'm looking forward to it. So, I added it to my tabs that need to be open when I open this browser. Like,
Sorry, I just read the chat room. Senda mentioned that bot is currently Rob, but the goal is to have it automated.
Yeah, well, good job, Rob. I didn't even notice, like a Turing test. I didn't even notice it was you.
That's so funny. All right, is that it? We good? Those are like yelling and stuff. I live in a neighborhood.
Your neighbors
It's
are
summer.
Your neighbors are
Sorry.
angry. It's warm out.
It's not that warm.
Like,
We're just gonna ignore that. I think.
Sure.
Let's move on. I mean, maybe we need a superhero from Hit the Streets, Defend the Block to get out there.
Somebody needs to probably go out there and defend.
Super-powered person. Sorry, not superhero.
There we go. Coolness. Anything else? Any other announcements?
No, I think that's it.
Cool.
You good? You don't want to say anything to people? Turning Point's out there.
Yeah, Turning Point quick starts out there. I mean, if you're a patron of the show, you already have it, and if you're a listener of the show and want to see the game that is a dramatic, collaborative decision-making engine, like this is the game that Senda and I have been working on for about a year and a half, and everything you need to get started playing the game is right in that bundle. Like you got rules, you got all the supplemental materials, and the rules will even teach you how to play the game like as you read them. I advise you read it once before you do that, but you can just sit down and start reading it to the table and then start playing. And the second episode of the one-shot AP for Turning Point dropped this week.
Ooh, yeah.
And I think it's the end. I think it's just 2 parts. So that's Senda, James, Rob, and Catherine Rahman and I playing the Dream Job.
Nice.
So I'm actually going to go back and listen to it. I have vague memories of that episode, and I remember it being like there's some pretty intense stuff in it. So anyway,
all right, let's move on then to the workshop. You ready? You ready? You
Yes.
ready? You ready?
Arcs! Workshop arcs! Have a beginning, a middle, and an end! Workshop! Multiple arcs! Thread them together! Make cool stuff! Arcs! Don't suck!
And then we pulled Bob's heart out, right?
No.
Kalima.
Yeah, light me on fire. You're
Kalima.
gonna pull my heart out. I'm telling you.
That was really good. All right, so back in episode 241, in January of 2017, we talked about arcs in an episode we called Arc of the Misdirected, which is, right at this one.
Yeah.
The episode of Doom.
Dun, 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 dun.
That means we have to do this again in like 300 more episodes so that we can do the last Arc Crusade. Something like that, right? We'll come up with a better name later. Anyways, in that episode in turn was inspired by the episode 229, Short versus Long Campaigns. In that episode, we talked about the arc as being a unit of campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
We really enjoyed that episode quite a bit. In fact, I liked it so much that I submitted a panel to Gauntlet Con.
Yeah,
for us to talk partially about that.
absolutely.
So we wanted to come back and revisit and see what 2 more years of experience could add to the topic. And there are some things to add to the topic. But first, we need definitions. Wow, let me actually do this the right way.
Well,
But first, we need to drop some dope definitions done dynamically by the deft and devastating daddy of the dictionary, the definition panda.
Behold! You are in the presence of Definition Panda.
Yeah, let's talk about some terminology from those previous episodes. So the first one I want to mention is session, and we define session as the time that we sit down and start playing a game until we stop playing for that given time period, right? So, like my Sunday night session goes from roughly 7:30 to 10:30.
Yes.
Okay. Story. So we often attribute story to the idea of adventure, right? So
Yeah.
And adventures, are a subset of the story. And we're using that measurement, right? So stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Correct.
Right? So that's how we know when we've reached the end of a story, because we started it, we went through the middle of it, and then we conclude it.
And I think it's important for this discussion to mention that those kinds of stories, they're focused generally on a small amount of elements and themes.
Yeah, exactly. And then an arc, right? An arc is a set of related stories that, when put together, tell their own larger story. And then they often have a beginning, middle, and an end. And they can actually explore a larger set of ideas and themes, or explore the themes and ideas from several different angles.
Yes, which we see in storytelling constantly.
Yeah. I mean, if we want to equate this, right, a story is really like an episode of a TV show, right? And then an arc is really like can be like a season.
Sure, absolutely. I'm in total agreement with you.
Yeah, and then
multiple seasons are a campaign.
Correct. And then one or more arcs played together, which then increases scope, complexity, themes, and elements, then becomes a campaign. And we previously, with no consulting of anyone else in the industry, defined a short campaign as a single arc, and that a long campaign was just more than one arc. We took no consultation from it. We just did that ourselves.
Yes.
And I'm okay with that.
We invented all this stuff.
Yeah, well, no, we didn't invent it. We're just saying it with just on our own.
Speaking with authority. Okay?
We arbitrarily slapped a bunch of labels on some stuff and said, "This is what it is."
Yeah. I mean,
well, and I mean, I'll be honest. This is the method by which I play most of my games. Like I play most of my games in the short campaign mode. Like I am rapidly coming up to the end of my arc in Masks. And I think that's where I'm going to shelve the game for until Tony's back. So anyway, cool.
You can actually have a season that ends and then have another season.
We are that's
so neat.
Like we hit like a really big. We'll talk about it if we get to the conversation corner because I think there was some pretty good stuff in that adventure. Anyway, we should now unpack.
I'm gonna dissect this shit.
Yeah, like let's unpack what's inside an arc.
We can dissect it together.
Yeah, let's here. I'll pin it down and you take the scalpel. Start cutting.
Sure, let's go. All right, so now that we have terminology, let's break it open, cut it open, slice it open, and see what makes up the
We should
arc.
use break. Break open sounds way better than cut.
Yeah,
It's kind of we were a little off on that.
a little off on that.
Okay,
You're
good.
right. Break. We'll break it open.
Break it open.
Like an egg.
Like a nut. Like a
nut.
walnut.
It's like an onion with layers.
No, arcs don't make you cry. I mean, some arcs make you cry.
That's true.
Yeah.
So objective. An arc has a goal. A goal for an arc best works, in my opinion, and in Phil's opinion, as a question. For instance, how will the characters defuse the impending war with the elves? Also, what will happen as the players search for the lost merchant caravan? Now, these questions, they have two parts to them. The first part is some sort of conflict. The second part is the inclusion of the PCs. I think those are the important things that go along with that. Thematic content is another thing that I think is important to an arc. An arc should have one or more themes or sets of ideas that pertain to that arc, such as greed, death, resistance, uprising, family, desire, devastation, and the such. Having 1 to 3 of these ideas floating around as your thematic material can really help you come up with NPCs, adventure ideas, descriptions of locations, events, and all kinds of elements for your game.
Yeah, so I think what's interesting here is what I'm thinking about right now is like my Masks game very much has like an arc, right? Very much clear, definitive arc. But I'm just started playing Forbidden Lands, and I don't think that game is really going to have an arc.
No?
No, because there's no. So I'm not playing any of the campaign packs yet, right? So at this point, I'm playing 4 sessions of it to make sure that everybody likes the game. So it's a hex crawl. Like there's no, in this case, there's no overarching story structure to this.
There's not, but a story will emerge from your play.
Now, there's absolutely going to be stories, right? Like, and there are places on the map where a story can occur. But what isn't there is the overarching one, right? Like this game is going to be like a string of pearls, right? Like it's going to be a bunch of stories all like strung together, but not necessarily any connective tissue that makes them into one thing.
Well, I mean, they have a connective tissue that makes them one thing.
Well, it's just them walking around.
Sure, but that is the idea. Like, it's episodic exploration.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is that when we talk about arcs being a thematic structure with a begin, middle, and end, right? That not every game has to have an arc. Games don't have to have a full campaign arc. They can be episodic. They can just be a whole bunch of individual events run together.
They certainly can just be a series of one-off.
Yeah, exactly.
With the same characters.
Right. So I guess that's the point I'm trying to make, is that not everything has to have an arc. I just like 99% of what I play has arcs.
For instance, in storytelling, Conan the Barbarian stories from Robert E. Howard do not have an arc.
Outside of the story.
Outside of the story.
Correct. Like, the story itself has a beginning, middle, and end.
The collected works of Conan the Barbarian are not necessarily an arc of stories.
Right. In fact, not only are they not an arc of stories, but Howard is actually pretty lax about when and where Conan is in time. Like purposely just bounces Conan around in different places, different times.
Oh yeah.
Which I thoroughly enjoy.
Yeah, one of the first ones, he's older.
Yeah, yeah. Just, I mean, it's just whatever strikes his, whatever struck him as how old Conan should be.
And then the Frost Giant's
Daughter. Oh my God,
he's much younger.
That is one of my favorites.
So to throw that out there, like that is the idea of a non-arc set of stories about the same character.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up because I didn't want people to think like every game you run has to have an arc.
It doesn't.
It doesn't, and they can still be a lot of fun.
Right.
But
so
we do love our arcs.
Let's talk about the structure of arcs.
Okay, so arcs have what we can. It's pretty close to a literary structure.
It is, in fact, very close to a literary structure. It's hard with role-playing games because we're not necessarily. It's not literature.
That's why I'm hesitant. That's why I was hesitant to say. But
this is the closest example that we
exactly
can
like if I
might understand.
Yeah, like if I have to describe it, describing it in literary terms is the best way to do it. Okay, so the cool part about that is that the structure then guides us in how we ask, how we work towards, and how we achieve that goal, right? That objective that we're going to set with the arc.
Yes.
And the easiest way to deal with this is the 3-act structure.
It is we all kind of have seen it.
Yeah, the 3-act. Look, the 3-act structure is great. It works. It works great. It's not the only structure, but it totally works.
It's also something in the conscious mind because critics have beaten it to death.
Yeah, and we're all conditioned to it. Like we're all conditioned from elementary school on to understand.
We're all conditioned to see it. Even if what we're seeing is not exactly what is considered a 3-act structure.
That's a good point. So break it down real quick. Like what goes in the 3-act structure?
All right. So the first act is the setup, which is create a goal. That's for pretty much any arc, any kind of arc, which we'll talk about later. You want to set a goal. The second part, or Act 2, is the rising action.
Big bad rising action.
It's your college name, right?
Yeah, college nickname. Yeah.
So this is actually a series of escalating events, successes and failures that happen as the protagonist or protagonists struggle to achieve their goals.
Yep, absolutely.
By the way, if you are a patron and you look at the show notes, I will have links in there in the show notes to the different places where I got this information from. And then Act 3 is the resolution. So that is the solving of the goal, or if the goal is changed. So there you go. Yeah.
So it's cool because it's a really easy concept for us to grasp. We've encountered it so many times in different media that it's a pattern, it's a structure that we see sometimes too readily, but readily enough.
Yeah.
But it's not the only structure that we're confined to.
Well, it's actually sort of the only structure we're confined to. Everything else is a variance on that.
Yeah. Okay. So you want to talk about some of that?
Yeah. So we've presented the 3-act structure. It's the easiest to understand. All of the structures, including the 3-act structure, are just variances on this particular set of ideas. So it's set a goal, which is create the experience. Set a goal. Create the experience. A bunch of events that bring characters closer to or farther away from this goal, and then this leads to a climax, which is the most important event where the goals are achieved. So those are the three steps really. It's set a goal, create the experience, and a bunch of events that will bring those characters into a line with that goal or away from that goal, and then find out what your climactic event is, the most important event that culminates in all that stuff, and then you have the completion of your arc or your story.
You're missing the denouement, the cuddling of all stories.
Well, there is
the cuddling of all literature.
That is fine. Like you can have that, but that can be anything between 3 sentences and period of time after that.
I'm going to make you go listen to my denouement episode on pandas.
The denouement is a thing that we associate with that third grade or whatever literary structure thing.
Freitag's pyramid.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like Freitag's pyramid is the simplified version of this.
Yes.
The thing that we don't always think about is that in those 3 steps, which you can have a denouement on the back end of it, that helps. It can help. But a lot of times these 3 steps are interspersed in stories and arcs.
Yeah.
So you don't always get a denouement because as soon as you achieve your goal, all it does, the denouement is it raises a bunch of other questions that you have to go deal with and new goals.
Yeah. For beat purposes, I actually do like when I'm playing out arcs, especially if I'm playing in a campaign with multiple arcs. I do like having, and I'm not afraid to do this in a session where not much happens, but I just let the characters kind of unpack and wander through, like talking to NPCs and stuff. Like, hey, all this shit went down, and yeah, probably next session all this shit's gonna start back up. But for this session, like, go back to town, or like talk to your anchor, like whatever. Like, I am a big fan having a little bit of that space in there, because I think unpacking that sometimes gives people that breathing room.
Well, that's actually something different. It's called, it's scene and something. Oh, I forget the name. What it's called. I was actually reading about it earlier today. I've read about it before. It's sort of like the idea is that you have scenes that are events, and then you have moments that are unpacking the stuff that just happened.
Okay.
So then, the scenes generally sort of drive plot forward, which is the events of the story, and those other moments are everybody reflecting on what has happened.
Yeah.
And that is a sort of a call and response kind of back and forth that you get.
And definitely a beat structure kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a beat structure kind of thing.
Yep. Cool.
Which I was going to put it in here, but I chose not to because I didn't think it necessarily fit into the idea of these larger arcs.
Beat structure?
Yeah. I mean, beat structure is important to storytelling, but not to the structure of an arc.
Give us one more section. Do your next section, then I may be able to find a place for that to fit.
Sure. All right. So the focus of an arc. Arcs can be focused on, as far as we've been able to find, two things really. The entire group, or the ongoing meta plot, which is called the meta arc, the meta story, the meta situation. I'm not really sure exactly what to. I don't know
if it has
plot is the wrong word.
It's plot. The plot is the wrong word.
So situation, the meta situation is probably the best thing.
Yep.
Or an individual character, which is a character arc.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is their situation and their questions that they're trying to answer about themselves and their problems that they're trying, or goals that they're trying to achieve, problems that they're trying to overcome.
Yep. And I think that it doesn't take much to piece this together. If I draw from one of your favorite TV shows that's on commercial television. If we look at Elementary, in the early Elementary, there is a meta arc in I think in the first season of where what's her name, Irene Adler.
Yes.
Is right, like that's a meta arc, and then our character arc is that Sherlock is dealing with coming out of rehab and adjusting back to normal life. Like that's his character arc, is like not falling into those habits.
We'll talk about this later. Like that is a character arc. Another character arc that goes along with the meta arc is his relationship with Irene.
Yes.
Like that is a second arc that gets interspersed with the other thing, and they all kind of mesh together.
And we're gonna talk a little bit about where that gets.
Arcs are simple in reality, but when you start mixing them together, they can be complex and very interesting.
Yep, which we're going to tease in just a second. So getting back to the idea of beat structure, arcs can be continuous or non-continuous. That means a continuous arc is one where the story for the arc progresses one session after another, right? So we play this session, and like each time we're advancing the arc forward.
Ooh, now we get to talk about one of your favorite shows in a second.
It can also be non-consecutive, where we do a story and then we change and do something unrelated to the arc as a different story, and then return to it. And so my best example for this, and it's one I've hung on to, since the 90s.
Apparently the cops showed up.
I mean, you can't yell that much in the street.
Must be some domestic disturbances going on outside.
No, he's right there.
I do live in the city of Buffalo, but I live in South Buffalo. It shouldn't be that bad.
Yep. Anyway, so the best example I can draw from going back to the 90s is the X-Files. The X-Files has a meta arc that is referred to in show canon as the mythology episodes. And they are wickedly fun episodes, but Chris Carter only sprinkles them every few episodes in a season. So that meta arc probably only fills like a half a season of material.
Not even. Sometimes it was 5 or 6 episodes.
Right. But he stretches it out for seasons by sprinkling it out. I might say stretched it out a little too much at times, but the point being is that...
That's what happens when you have a show where you don't know where the end is.
Correct.
Yes.
Like Lost.
Yes.
But the thing about X-Files was that what Carter used to intersperse those episodes with was another great device, which was the Monster of the Week. So you sometimes got, bits of the mythology, and then you got like Fluke Man.
Yes. So here, let's talk about that idea for a second. So when you have something like the X-Files, and you have these non-continuous arcs where you have these episodes interspersed, it's a lot of fun as a storyteller or as a game master telling stories with other people, because those episodes in between the non-continuous stuff, you can do a lot of things with them. You can play with themes. You can play with genre.
That's where you can put other arcs in place.
Other arcs in place, yeah. But even that Monster League stuff with the X-Files was fun because some of those episodes were comedic in nature.
Sure.
The mythology arcs never were. The mythology episodes were
Never funny. Never funny.
They had you could tell because they had a certain tone
Yep.
and a certain theme that went along with them.
Yep.
But the other episodes, they were a lot of fun. Yet they also fit inside the theme of the X-Files.
Yep. Yeah. It one of the cool things it did was it gave the show writers, a chance to, and this is where I was going to get into beat structure. Right, it gave the show writers a chance to change beats.
Mm-hmm.
So like they could do a super serious episode like like information about the kidnapping of Mulder's sister or origins of the cigarette smoking man. But then like they did that one which I absolutely love, which is the one with Alex Trebek in it.
I don't remember it.
Oh, it's about the Men in Black.
It was Alex Trebek and
Jesse
the Body
Jesse
Ventura.
the Body Ventura are the Men in Black. And it's not that they actually were, it's just that that's what they looked like to the person, but they just actually in the show cast them as it. Anyway. So what winds up being really good is that the writers then could back off the tension of the mythology episode by putting in a funny episode.
Yeah.
Right? Or a super creepy episode, because sometimes they did like really creepy ones, like the, what was it, The House. Bob, what's the really creepy one? The one they don't show, the Peacock Brothers.
Oh, that's called Home.
Yes, Home.
It takes place in Mayberry.
Yeah.
And the sheriff's name is Andy Taylor.
That's a bad, that episode only ever once like aired on TV.
It will never air it on regular
Yeah,
TV.
creepy.
That creepy, huh?
Oh, yeah. Oh, oof. Anyway, but that was the cool part, right? And that's where I think when we talk about where would beat structure fit into this?
Yeah, the meta beat structure. There's a bit of that too.
Absolutely. Cool. Talk about how big an arc's got to be. Like
the only thing that we came up with for an arc is it has to be more than one story.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, you can't really have like a campaign arc if you just told it in one story, because that's just the story arc.
3 stories to an arc, it tends to be what we engage in because it makes sense to us. Like
Sure.
3 is a magic number for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's something about trinities that just work for us.
Yeah.
Quintets are also fairly common. That's a thing that
Absolutely.
people do. Serialized games are also useful, especially if they're essentially located or thematically consistent.
Mhm.
For instance, Monster of the Week would be a good example of this. Like if you've ever watched any Supernatural, they tend to have Monster of the Week, but they also tend to have like little tidbits. This is another kind of storytelling thing that you can do. If you want to have your Monster of the Week, but you want to put your meta plot a little bit into it,
Right.
the meta story, the meta situation,
Mhm.
into it a little bit. Like every monster is really a symptom of what is the problem that's
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on. That
Or
is
they
Or they
all-
seed something else
Yeah.
in amongst them.
They all have a barcode on them.
Uh-huh.
Like, why?
Why, right?
Yeah.
So that goes back to that thing that I was talking about, where you have a goal, which is eliminate as many monsters as humanly possible.
Mhm.
But then you have a rising. Wow, that is weird. That static that is coming through. I don't even know where it's coming from. Anyways, you have a series of problems that arise, or issues that get the heroes closer or farther away from their goals as they go through.
Yep.
So like that is just the kind of stuff that happens in storytelling.
Mhm.
If you ever looked at I mean that's also, I guess, yeah, because if you meta this idea of the beat structure of that stuff is scalable. It has scale.
Which is exactly what I was going to get into as my next point, is
Mhm.
that there is a fractal quality to arcs.
Yeah.
Right? Like we can look at arcs on different levels, and we can find things that are that are like arcs, right? Like we can go all the way down to the scene level and see the beginning, middle, and end of a scene.
Yeah.
We can go up another layer, and we can see it at the story level, right? Like an individual story has a beginning, middle, and end. And then we can go to a campaign level, and we can see that like an arc in a campaign has a beginning, middle, and end.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a very fractal. It's a very fractal concept, which is cool because when we talk about advanced uses, that's another way to actually add complexity, is to have arcs going at different levels within your game. But before we get headed to advanced use, like how do we even use these?
Yeah, so let's talk about we have these pieces, right? So it's,
Yep.
it's not that. So they're structures, right?
Mhm.
That's the first thing. They start with a goal. So come up with a goal. That's always important.
I think if you don't know, so GMing tip, if you're writing up some sort of arc, like you're writing up like a whole bunch of action that's going on, like they're gonna fight, Dr. Infinity, then they're gonna do this, and then they're gonna do that. If you don't know,
If you've dictated their actions, you're missing the point.
right, and if you don't know what the goal is for this, like you've also missed the point. Like If you're just like doing like you're not making an arc if you're just like dictating a bunch of things that you're gonna throw in front of the paths of a character.
Yeah, if you're just creating a bunch of situations.
Right, because then you're just making a string of situations. But
Which
if you're
is cool, but
which is totally fine.
and it could be a story with an arc at some point.
Possibly, and we'll talk about that in a little bit about like where and when to start arcs. But yeah. So anyway, have a goal.
Yes,
like
have a goal.
know your goal.
Because if the goal for Tony was to find out why this thing was
Which is exactly what the goal of my last arc was, which was to answer the question from character. So in our session 0, Tony's character said, "I was created for a purpose," and then left that on the table because that's what a Rainmaker does. Is they just hand you something that juicy and leave it there. So my
so the goal of the story in a lot of ways was to find out why, at least in this particular arc. The goal of this arc was to find out why Tony's character was created.
Yep, which we did.
Yeah,
Sure did.
And
Sure did.
that's the kind of stuff that you can ask about the game.
Yep.
I mean, they don't have to be necessarily questions to the characters. They can be questions of the game and the situation itself.
Yeah, and
then you play towards that.
when we get a little further in, I'll unpack it a little more because the question actually got answered early in the arc, but the rest of the arc was like, well, what are you going to do about
Well,
it?
that's the thing. Sometimes when you solve a goal, that's why there's no denouement all the time.
Right.
Because the denouement is really just a re-upping of a new goal.
Yeah, yes, I agree. Okay, cool. Continue on, please.
To your denouement point, I think denouements are important after climaxes.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they are.
Cuddling is always important after a climax.
Because climaxes are really important events, and when really important goals are answered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You don't have to have you don't have a denouement during rising action. You just keep raising keep raising stakes.
Well, that's the thing. It's the thing I think that the rising action is when you talk about beat structure. When there are not very many questions left to answer, and you've built all the tension based on answering a bunch of questions up to that point,
right?
Or basically having a bunch of goals solved, then you've come to the event that will be your climactic event.
Yeah, I think that sometimes players think that something is the climax, but in reality, if you're looking at it, they're still on rising action. Mm-hmm. They just don't know. Like they think they've reached the climax, only to find out that once they finish the thing, like, oh no, you're only on the beginning of the path.
It's true.
And that's a fun subversion of expectation.
Yeah.
Right. Like
also, it gives them a little bit of what they think is a little bit of a breather before things ramp back up.
Right. Like they think it's the climactic moment, but you take it away from them.
You could, or you could just introduce the next terrible thing.
Yeah.
That came
just
from their actions,
just escalate it.
Or you were always planning on escalating it.
Right.
Or their action escalated it without them knowing it.
Exactly.
So.
You were talking about a goal.
I was talking about goals. So we're talking about goals. The goals, they tend to create conflicts for characters. Mm-hmm. So that helps drive play forward. As game masters and as players, we can always ask ourselves questions about how this goal and conflict might apply to everyone in the game, so that we can help each other move play along.
Yep.
If you don't want to, if you just want your game master to do that, and that's what you've agreed upon as a group, that's also fine.
No wrong, bad fun.
Yep. I think it's important to decide on one or more themes to go with the goal and conflicts. What that does is it really helps kind of box you in and focus you, which when you have too many options, you don't really know what to do. When you have some narrowed options, it gives you springboards for ideas.
Yep.
Then you can start to lay out some of the events that you think will help bring the conflict to a climax.
Yep.
Or a climactic event.
Yep.
And then after that, we tend to know enough to get started playing.
Right, and so the cool thing about arcs is like we don't have to know all the steps for how the arc's going to complete before we get started. Right, we can just have a rough idea. Like we can have a rough idea of where this is going. We can kick it off, and as long as our session is shorter than the length of time to complete the arc, then we have time between sessions to make adjustments.
It's true.
So. Knowing that like I get about 3 hours of play in for every time that I play Masks, if my arc is going to be more than one session, which my notes are almost always more than one session's worth of material, then I can play up to a point, and then I can see what has happened, adjust the arc accordingly. Or in some cases, I can have like in the case of the game I ran on Sunday, the arc was going to go in one of two places. Like it was going to go to one of two places, all depending on this one fight scene.
Mm-hmm.
And when the fight scene was over, I was like, okay, next session, I know which choice, like I know which piece goes in as the final part of the arc.
Yeah. So in some ways, it's almost like hitting a moving target as you're moving along.
Mhm.
That is a thing that happens.
Yeah, and I think that's important because no matter what you've envisioned for your arc, your players are going to interact with it, and once they do, you really don't know what's going to happen.
Yep.
And if you're playing something like PBTA, like a string of 6 minuses, and all of a sudden your arc is a very different place. Like when you have to make a whole bunch of hard moves, like all of a sudden
things have changed.
Yeah, you might be like, "Welp, what I thought was going to be the climax for this."
Well, it's because your bad guy just got way ahead of the player.
Way ahead of the players, and you're like, "Well, now."
Or your player characters got way behind the main characters. The protagonist got way behind the bad guy.
Yeah. So I think the important thing to know about arcs is it's good to have an idea where it's going. But much like anything when we talk about GMing, don't hold that destination tightly. Like you can point towards it, right? Like you can point towards it and be like, this is where I think I want to go, but don't make that happen. Let it play through and let it land where it lands. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool. All right.
We can talk about tricks now?
Let's jump up the difficulty here, right?
All right. So let's get fancy.
Yeah, let's get fancy.
Fancy. I actually don't remember the words of the song. Never mind.
That's okay.
Sorry. So you can thread multiple arcs together. Not consecutively, in fact, if you wanted to, creating a very complex story structure. Heck, you could even just take some character arcs and meta arcs and insert events for them in the same session or story, which would make things even more not convoluted, but more intense. In fact, I think when you do stuff like that, you're actually hinting at more intense sessions.
Yeah, a long time ago we talked about complexity in games, right? And so, when you start introducing multiple arcs, you are raising the complexity, but we don't use complexity necessarily as a bad word.
Well, complexity is fine. I'm with you. When you have multiple arcs, it's more things for you to juggle. It's more things for the player characters to remember, too.
Yeah, the thing that you're trying to avoid as you're raising complexity is convoluting things.
Correct. Which is why you only want to go so far.
Correct. Otherwise, players are like, what? Like they have no idea what's happening.
Unless you're really good about being clear about your storytelling.
Super clear.
And the players that you're playing with are very clear about their storytelling.
Yep. Remember, don't be clever.
Don't be too clever.
If you think you're being clever as a GM, you're not.
And I almost live on being clever though, because it's what makes me happy about running games. It's so. You all say it all the time, and I'm always like, but I like trying new and clever things.
I mean, I think it's fine if you have a group that's prepared for that.
Yeah.
But it's not a thing you won't catch me doing it at a convention.
No, I won't do it at a convention.
Right, a convention you're gonna get a very, very.
That's what my home game gets.
Yeah, that's fine. I think if your home game is like, well, Chris is gonna break out the chemistry set and see what he can make. That's fine.
Yeah. So I am one of the other tricks that you can use is take an event that includes 2 different arcs and put it in the same event.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's the thing with Sherlock Holmes with his, in a lot of ways, his drug rehab thing, the Iron Adler thing to go along with the Moriarty thing. That is one event when you find out that she is Moriarty that has a whole lot of weight and impact on it. Now, you can't just do that stuff off the bat. You have to set it up, right? Those are usually,
yeah. That was.
I don't know if I want to call that a climactic moment. It's definitely a twist or a turning point moment for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm not referencing the game. I'm actually referencing the idea of a turning point in storytelling.
Oh yeah.
Which is a thing.
Yep.
So in this case, the complexity, it's not coming in the idea, but in the management of ongoing arcs. Like, how do you manage that stuff?
Yep.
That has a lot to do with shifting goals. Goals can shift and change and evolve in a lot of ways. And you can also just have new arcs arise because of that. So that's all about management and how you do that.
Indeed. You can even take this up another notch.
Sure.
I will refer to this as the Gibson. You can take this up another notch when your arcs start to converge to solve the meta plot.
Yeah, it's great.
Right. So my reference point for this will be if you have ever read the book Count Zero by William Gibson. That was my first encounter with this structure where Gibson kicked off 3 seemingly independent stories.
Except they're
not. And you're reading them, and for the longest time as you're reading them, each chapter switches to another character, and you're like, okay, I'm just reading about these characters doing things. And then within the last couple chapters, all those storylines converge right at one point and solve the meta plot of the story. And I have done this once or twice. I did this once in a vampire campaign. It took a decent amount of planning to make it happen, like moving 5 character story arcs into one conclusion. But if you can pull it off, there is a high degree of satisfaction for it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever been as successful than that time, but I have done smaller versions of it.
I bet if we looked at those 3 stories too in Count Zero, those 3 different arcs,
Yeah.
we would find that structured through of like each of them have a goal.
Yep.
Each of them have a bunch of problems that arise.
Absolutely.
Their goals might change along the way because
Yep.
of the twists and the turning points that occur during the story, and then it all culminates in a climactic event that solves all of those arcs together.
Yep. Blake Ryan's talking about it sounds like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. And yes,
it's very much like Lock, Stock,
and Two Smoking Barrels is like the funny version of that.
Yeah, and there you can actually see that form, that idea in a lot of different media. There's been other things that have done it.
Arc Convergence was the 4th Ditch Lilies album where Lily ended up in a poly-quad relationship in Illinois for about a month.
Well then.
Wow. That's
okay then.
All right. That was a lot about unpacking arcs.
It was, in fact.
And we're going to go to the next segment where we're going to talk a little bit more about tips and tricks.
With the chat room, but I have a question for you first.
Yes.
We're going to talk about the chat room, then we're going to go to the next segment. But I have a question for you first.
Yes, and yes.
Are you ready for the question?
I'm ready.
You ready for the question?
I am.
Are you a god?
Yes, I am.
Good answer.
Thank you. Demigods, the new tabletop RPG from Jason Mills, brings the world of myth and legend to a modern setting. The action-adventure game tweaks the Apocalypse World rule set to create powerful mythic characters who are tangled up in complex relationships with each other and their pantheons. Embrace themes similar to Good Omens, American Gods, The Iron Druid, and Percy Jackson as you take control of the story.
Demigods is kickstarting July 9th through August 8th. For more information and a quick start of the game system, go to demigodspbta.com and follow Jason on Twitter at It's Probably Okay.
Oh my god, I love that handle so much.
I know, it's really good.
It's probably okay.
And let's look at the tote board.
Tote board says...
With 15 days to go and 720 backers.
Wow, that's a
That is
nice
a ridiculous number. Out of their pledge goal of $6,900, they are at $22,540.
That is a really solidly well done Kickstarter.
Nice job.
Chugging.
Coolness.
Kind of want it.
Kind of want it?
Yeah.
Sure.
It's kind of in my wheelhouse.
Oh, it's totally in your... I want you to run it. I want to play it. I want to play in that game.
Maybe I'll grab it. I'll think about it.
Yeah.
I just got Grill Underground.
I'm not saying you have to get it now. It'll come out later.
Yeah, it's true. I mean,
you don't have to back it on Kickstarter. It will come out on drive-thru.
That's true.
Yeah, it's
but
coming.
I can get it early.
Don't worry.
I just got a Grill Underground though, and that looks really good. So.
Yeah.
Bob, do you want to say anything since we've been
Yeah, maybe we've been, like,
the
kinda
chat?
You haven't been neglecting me. This is how some of the topics
I
go.
don't think that we were neglecting you.
No.
But I wanted to. I thought maybe your voice was getting.
Yeah, we
dry
haven't heard
there.
your lovely voice in a while.
Hey.
Oh, that's so cute.
Oh, man. I love messing with you guys sometimes.
It's so lovely.
Our chat room is a lovely bunch, as always.
Look like we have somebody new in there.
Enraptured by this topic.
You have somebody new in there?
Yes. We do actually have somebody new.
Welcome.
Welcome to Yantubos.
Welcome, Yen Tubos.
Do we know who Yen Tubos is?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Well, welcome.
All right. Back to the topic.
That's it? They got
in the
nothing?
chat room?
They got nothing?
No like actual questions yet, so.
All right.
Oh, it's
Oh,
Rory
it's
McLeod.
Rory. Oh, hey,
Bam.
Rory. Welcome. Rory
Here we
is
go.
also in our Slack room. Yeah.
Rory.
Oh, see?
Psych.
I know it's so funny because everybody's Twitch name is like in most cases different, and so there's like this moment where people show up and you're like, who is this person?
Well,
but it's somebody we know the whole time.
Usually Jerry does the chat room roundup.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I don't think he saw that time. Yeah, he was. I
It's
guess
like
he
an
was
episode of Scooby Doo.
Scooby Doo.
It was Rory the whole time.
And he would have got away with it if it weren't for you meddling kids. All right.
Okay, good stuff. All right, you want to go back into this?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Cool. All right, so having discussed structure and uses for arcs, we're now going to talk about some GMing and design tips for using arcs in your game.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a question.
You can go ahead.
Okay, when should you introduce arcs into a new game, and how many should you kick off at the same time?
So I'm going to talk about me personally, right? So this is my shtick,
I'm
not
going to give my shtick too.
yeah. So the answers to these questions are like not like rules and like handed down from the mountain on tablets.
We're giving opinions now.
Yeah, this is more like a pirate's code.
I mean, we were sort of giving opinions earlier, but they were more researched opinions.
Yeah,
this is really just personal anecdotal.
This is
opinions.
like shit we do.
Yeah.
So my thing is, I don't really commit hard to an arc in the first session. Like the first session is almost for me always a warm up. Maybe at the end of the session I'll put a little teaser. Like in my recent Masks game, the first session was like they just fought this guy in a museum, but at the end of the fight they found this like weird marking on him. Like that's it. Like I didn't really get embroiled. Like I just left it there, and then I actually waited another episode or two and then put that weird marking on someone else.
Yeah, isn't that the idea of like you're just gonna leave stuff out there and see what they glam onto?
Part of it's that, and part of it is yes. Part of it is I'm putting stuff out to see what they'll bite onto. Part of it is, and this is my personal philosophy. I don't know if this game's going past 4 sessions.
True.
So I'm not going to spend hours crafting out this well thought out arc on a game that I'm not 100% sure is going to be around in 3 more sessions. So I tend not to get too involved in arcs. Like I could have started Tony's arc right at the beginning, but I didn't start Tony's arc till like almost 4 or 5 sessions in. And then I was like, well, now I think I'll commit to this storyline. So that's my personal thing is in the first one, you'd be hard pressed to actually find an arc in my first play of a game. And then it'll start creeping in. How about you?
I'm not really a huge fan of introducing no more than 2 at the beginning.
I agree.
When I started off, because that's just any more than that, you start getting people getting confused about what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, people are starting to they're just trying to grasp hold of their characters. If they've never played the game before, they're trying to get their minds around rules. And then, yeah,
even if people have their own arcs going on at session 0, because some of session 0 is about that, right? Like, what are the character arcs that you kind of want to explore with your characters?
Love letters,
right?
Yeah.
You don't have to go after that explicitly though in session 0 if you don't want to. Like just getting a couple of them out there is important. Like whatever the meta plot is, the meta situation, I should say.
Yep.
I gotta stop saying plot. I mean, plot is a perfectly good word to use if people want to use it, but I'm more of a big fan of the idea of situation.
No, I like. Maybe later we'll talk about the difference between the two. But ever since you explained it to me, I'm also the same. Like I try to stay away from the word plot because it's not a plot.
There's too many things. I've said this before, but for those who are new to the chat room or haven't heard me say it before, or new to the podcast and whatnot, there was a bunch of literary terms that don't necessarily one-to-one go over to role-playing games.
Plot is one of them.
Yeah, because a lot of what we're doing with role-playing games is improvising story.
You and I have a set of terms that we made for talking about, and we can get back to the topic at hand in a second, about how a game creates story.
Yes.
Right. So it basically consumes situations, and it basically leaves.
I think it's interesting to say consumes because I think it utilizes because those situations don't necessarily go away right away.
Yeah, but it takes in, right? It takes in situations, things happen, and the end product of what happens is what we call a story because that's the thing we can tell other people.
Yep.
Like, and it's not necessarily like it. A plot is a thing that you map out for a book
because it's a series of events.
Right, but it's a series of events you're in full control of because you're like, I'm mapping out the plot of this book. And now I'm going to write said book. But in the way that we like to run role-playing games, we present situations.
Yeah, because I guess the actual definition, if I remember correctly, is plot is a series of events.
Yeah.
The story is the telling of those series of events.
Correct. So cool. Anyway, so I agree. Like I like your answer as well, right? So no more than 2 because again, it's that complexity part.
I prefer if the 2 that do get presented are linked in some way. That works for me. I mean, that's what I prefer.
Yeah.
And then I will start adding more.
Yep.
And getting more complex and layered. But that way, if you do it slowly over time, people don't necessarily forget, especially as long as you're reinforcing other arcs as you go on.
So I will say that if you're starting a game and you're on the player side of the table, like your job as a player is not to fight the first couple arcs that come up.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Like don't be like, well, why do we want to go to the high halls? You're playing the airy peaks.
Because you want treasure and you found a treasure map to go to the high halls.
Right.
What more do you need?
Right. Well, that's the thing. And actually, we're going to talk about this on Pandas next week about conceits in games.
Uh-huh.
Like, you know, but the idea being is that, like, from a player side, a GM is just trying to get this game off the ground. They're doing 8 things at the same time. And if one of them is to toss out the beginnings of an arc, like, take the hook, right? The juicy worm on the hook, as Senda would say.
Take the hook.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
You got question 2.
Yeah, question number 2.
It's in black.
I'm in black.
You are in black.
That's how I know it's my question, because my text matches.
I'm in blue and my text is in
See? That's interesting. What tools do you use to keep track of arcs when you are managing your campaigns?
Oh, I like Google Docs a lot. I use lists of characters, location, and events to help me. And what I do is I like to have a what's going on sheet in my Google Doc thing too, and some notes for each session to update where arcs are. Now, that list of characters, events, and locations, I update that too with what's going on currently there and what's important about them. So with those kind of 2 things together, I can generally manage my arcs pretty effectively.
Nice. I am not far off from you, except that I still use my tried and true favorite OneNote.
Yeah, OneNote.
Because I like the binder-like quality to it, so it's not one. It's not one Google Doc or a folder of Google Docs.
Multiple, folders.
Yeah, like I have mine as they're pages, so I can just click to them really quick.
Probably better.
It's pretty helpful. But yeah, a what's going on doc is a what's going on page is almost always. I can't even say almost always. It's always in my notes, like what's really going on here. In fact, in order to do the arc for Tony's Origins, I had to spend like 2 or 3 days writing the what's going on page, because I was like, none of this is going to make any sense until I can explain what's going on to myself, right? Like, I can't run this until I can explain it to myself first.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that. I mean, and the reason I brought this up is I've heard other people do campaign management and stuff via Trello board, like you know, you can make a Trello card with like your arc and a checklist on it.
You can.
And just, you know, put them in columns, like these are currently going on, or these columns, these are meta plots, these are character arcs. Like, you can do it that way.
That seems too much like work.
Yes, it's a lot. You could do them like clocks.
Yeah, you can do
right?
that.
You do countdowns.
I have that in my Google Docs too.
Yeah, I tend to have something similar to a countdown.
I usually sometimes if I need to, I'll put a list of like circles next to it and then X's. So I will delete a circle, put an X on it if it's moving along.
See, the OneNote gives you checkboxes.
Yeah.
So I'll like take a thing and I'll make them checkboxes and I'll just go through and check them off as we're going on. Yeah. Cool. I'm sure there's other ways to do it.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's probably better ways.
But I think the important part is that if you're running a lot of arcs, there is a layer of campaign management that you need to be doing. It may not be, you may be able to do it in your head, or you may have to go into a doc and write a little bit or update something, but you need to do something where you're looking over the arcs that you have in play. You're advancing certain ones, and much like I almost think of it like a mixer. Like sometimes you like bring one in, you're like, all right, in this episode I'm gonna raise up this character arc because I'm gonna turn up the heat on Bob and his dad's relationship, and I'm gonna back this one off, right?
By the way, to put the heat on something is to basically create an event that focuses on that.
Yeah, start making situations where they have to deal with it. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, cool. Yeah. All right, cool. Go ahead. What's our next question?
There's a blue question. I suppose I should ask.
Yeah, that's you.
If you have to end a campaign early, should you try to resolve all the arcs in that last final session?
I think we are in complete agreement in this. I would say you do not.
Yeah, no, don't do that.
Right. I think you try to resolve the main one.
Yes.
And if you didn't have a meta arc, then I think you look for what is currently the most interesting character arc and work towards that.
Yeah, just pick the ones that you think are most relevant to bringing things to a satisfying conclusion.
Right. And if you are going to, so if you know you're ending your campaign early and you can get, if you can get 2 sessions out of it, my suggestion would be have the second to last session be the climactic conclusion to the main arc that you're talking about. And then in the next session, the denouement section, with that arc concluded, you don't have to do any serious rolling as in dice, but you can do some quick role play to bring some of the other ones to conclusion, right? I think a good example of this is, just because I watched the recap the other day, was Stranger Things 2. the dance at the end of the second season is like this great denouement that kind of wraps up a bunch of things quickly, right? Like Max and I forget his name. They start dancing, right? And then 11 comes in, right, in the dress, and they have their first kiss on the dance floor. And Dustin comes in with his cool with his cool hair and all of it like very quickly in a visual format kind of like just pulls all those additional things together and starts tying them off.
It really does.
Without taking anything away from the actual major climax, which was super cool. So okay, cool.
I had a thought.
Yeah.
There's a thought that I had. I can't remember what it was. Something about. I got distracted by Chunk Hash Brown in the chat room,
Brown?
also known as Fry Daddy.
Okay.
Where Gator made chunk hash browns for dinner. Breakfast for dinner.
Somebody, Rob, I think, said that was his next high school teen drama character.
I said it's the Twitter handle for Shaggy.
Yeah, and then Kevin Lovecraft came in and was like, Chunk Hash Brown, also known as Fry Daddy. And they were all dying, and I had a thought, and then it was gone.
Chunk Hash Brown is a orc decker out of Seattle who does all of his runs plugged into public payphones in diners. Chunk Hash Brown.
There you
go. Yeah. Cool. Last question. As we talk about arcs, game designing hats on. As a game designer, what can you do in the design of your game that facilitates the use of arcs?
So. Assuming a session 0, and your first 1 to 4 sessions are your setting of goals and conflicts, because that's your part 1, then I like to have some kind of tracking that helps notify you when the game should move from your struggle towards your goal section to your ramp up to the climax section. Okay. I like a mechanic that could actually, if I was going to have a mechanic to do that, and not just feel it out as a storyteller, that's a good one. And the best place I've seen that is for me, Scum and Villainy. So it's got that in it. You mean you have your first few sessions that sort of like let you know who the important factions are to your game.
Sure.
And then you raise up those loyalty levels till one of them gets to 3. Not loyalty levels, whatever they're called. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Those levels to 1 to 3.
Yeah, the rank. Yeah.
And that initiates endgame, where you ramp up to the climax and finish.
Yeah.
It's actually a really good structure.
It's actually a little better than it's actually in the fact that it triggers an end game, it's actually better than Blades in the Dark, because Blades in the Dark doesn't have an ending. There's no end scenario where once you've achieved what is it? Forget how it goes. You have to achieve something with like one faction. You have to get to a certain level with one faction, and then you get asked to do one last job.
Oh,
I think that's how it happens in Scum and Villainy, right?
You get to one faction, you have to do one last series of jobs.
Yeah.
Which is usually
that's your last arc.
Yeah.
Okay. My answer to this is I really like the way Apocalypse World works. So in the beginning of Apocalypse World, like you draw I think it's your homestead, and then you have things that are like in that are in scarcity, and those become fronts, right? But what it does is right in the beginning of the game, as a group, you kind of set like, hey, these things are important to our characters. These things are going to come up as problems in our game, and that is the material to make arcs out of them. Like that's so. I guess from a design point of view, I think that's something that as a group, defining what those are. Like I think you could totally do it as a GM, right? Like I have run tons of traditional games in the past where I came up with all the arcs, but I think that as a designer, putting stuff in for your session, like first of all, actually making session 0 part of your game, not a thing that like, oh hey, I'm doing a session 0 for my game, but instead like, hey, on the first time you play this game, this is the shit you're gonna do. The Sprawl does this. So the Sprawl does this thing during character creation where you have to go around and tell previous jobs you've done, and those previous jobs put ticks onto the corporate clocks. You name the corporation, you name the job you did, and then other people at the table can say whether they were on that job with you or not, and then you put ticks on the clock. And what happens is at the beginning of your game, those corporations are the ones that are aware of who you are and are starting to look for you.
Yeah, it gives you a history and ramps up the tension.
And it gives the GM material to know, like, oh, you guys, like, based on what Bob said, like, you guys have a real beef with Ares. Cool. I'm gonna my first job I'm gonna design for you guys is a run on Ares. Or it's an indication like, hey, you guys have picked up a lot of heat on Ares. Like, you're probably not gonna want to do a job for them. I will, like, go pick one of the other corporations and offer you a job. Like, let some things cool off.
They beat me to it in the chat room. They were talking about high school Shadow Sprawl. I was like, isn't that just hackers? And I already said it.
Yes.
With magic, of course. The hackers
Yes.
with magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you though. Like, I think all that stuff is
Yeah.
it's all good.
I think you build that into your game, right? You build in the tools for the GM because you're just helping the GM at that point.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that I think a lot of games don't do very well, because I think a lot of games do like the introductory parts, because like that part, the Act 1 stuff, if we're going with the React structure, but the setting of goals and like introducing the characters and things like that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of games do that stuff well. I think what a lot of games don't do well is the transition from part 2 to part 3, from ramp up of the problems and the back and forth between that to going to the end game climactic event.
Yeah, you know why I think that's hard? I think that's hard because you're in the space where, as a designer, I'm now relying on you as a GM to run this game. I can put some supports in, like I think Scum and Villainy does a really good job, as in they put in supports in terms of there are phases of play. Like you can sure do your own thing, but you're still gonna do free scene. You're gonna do a job, and then you're gonna do your post job wrap up stuff, your downtime, right? But for other games, like once you get into that middle water, like that's the part where it's like, I hope I've armed you well enough as with information in the book to keep running this game over time.
That's where we're starting to see these new designs pop up.
Yeah.
So like Scum and Villainy did it.
Yep.
Somebody mentioned Band of Blades, which they do it too, because it's a hex crawl that goes to basically the Helm's Deep. Like there's a rising tension as you're running away from the bad guy army across this hex map to the last bastion of humanity, where the climactic event occurs. Like it's got the structure built right into it.
Yeah.
Like we're starting to see more and more games that are like that, where they are. It's the thing that I've always been looking for, sort of with these frameworks. I always look for frameworks for adventures. Now I'm looking for frameworks for campaign play or arc play.
So I think what would be interesting design-wise is to design a mechanism in your game that helps a GM build that structure with them. Like the GM can get it primed, but you could even do something like do you remember I had those that Kickstarter product from years ago, the story cards?
Yeah.
And it did like this tarot kind of thing. So what it did was it had this like layout. It was very tarot-like, but each position meant something. Like this is the person that opposes this. This is the person that will help this. This is the event, whatever. And like you laid out the cards in different ways, and then you put out the cards, and then in like a tarot-like way, like you read this to kind of come up with like what to do. It would be interesting to make a game where the GM was aided by the mechanisms of the game to steer the arcs.
Well, I'm with you. Like I think, like I said, the teams I just mentioned, I think do that.
Yeah, I
like
think
to see
like
more stuff. Like
yeah, like I think that would be cool to see like more places where, like, hey, because again, this happens, right, where we all fall into our comfort zones, right? So you may be running a bunch of arcs, but you may be running them in the space where you're totally comfortable, and an outside prompt from the game that says like, hey, by the way, it's time for you to introduce a twist.
Yeah, I mean, I've now played a whole bunch of, and I will plan on playing some more like cooperative story-based board games. Like they do some interesting things about structuring their stories, but they're way more
Controlled,
right?
yes. Board games are always way more controlled.
So it'd be, and you just need to like back that off a little bit, and then add in some more of the improvisational, creative nature of role-playing games, and I'm sure there's some things there.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some fertile ground in there for design. And I, in another couple of games, might be down for trying to go into that space.
Even if it's a stack of index cards that, like, at some point, like as you're doing like arc beats, Like, you flip an index card over and write down what happened.
Yep.
And when that stack of index cards is over, like, you should be at your point where you should push it into the climax.
Yeah,
And that's how you can sort of, like, judge where you should be pushing your arcs, right?
exactly.
That'd be interesting. Like, there's some interesting design space there.
Mhm.
Well, I guess that's it, huh?
Cool.
So that's our retake on arcs.
Yeah.
If you were around the first time, which, you should hear it today or last week.
Right.
We hope you found something new this time around. I think you did. We explored some much different ground.
I mean, some of it's definitely going to sound the same because I pulled some of the information
Yeah.
out, but I hope that we kind of freshened up that look.
Yeah, I mean, I went pretty deep into the weeds on ideas of theme and things like that for this one. Well, we're going to check in the chat room. With the I can't talk today. We're going to check in with the chat room and see what's up.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're going to go conversation corner.
Yeah, we'll do that.
But before that, I should mention another show on Misdirected, Mark.
Okay.
Down with D&D. That's for myself and the Mad Wizard Merwin, which we're on a bit of a hiatus right now because Sean's dealing with some personal stuff. But we'll be back soon. But we dish about everything D&D, and we focus mostly on the brand and the newest edition of the world's most popular tabletop role-playing game. All right,
Cool.
What's in the chat room?
Yeah, so Rory had a question. Rory said, I wouldn't mind hearing about the pitfalls of trying to implement a 3-arc structure in an RPG.
I don't think you actually try to implement a 3-act structure in an RPG. That's me. Like, I don't, because I think the 3-act structure is not necessarily what everybody thinks it is. I think it is really more the thing that I said before, which is set a goal, do the struggle bus thing.
Yeah, I actually think
See you rising
I
up.
think try-fail is actually
Try-fail is the better.
try-fail is a really good mechanism. Because I think try-fail actually mimics more role-playing games than anything else. Like,
Yeah.
you are constantly trying, and whether sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail, and everything advances forward.
The really weird thing about role-playing games is often you are succeeding more than you are failing,
Yes.
which is the opposite of how storytelling normally goes.
Yes.
You were usually failing more than you were succeeding.
Right.
So that is a thing to think about, because people, when they're playing games, they want to succeed more often than not. There are, of course, those people who like to fail and make things blow up. But I think the general consensus is that more people want to succeed than fail, because life is hard enough as it is.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer Anja's comment. The pitfall is committing yourself to something that your players aren't interested in. So in the Masks game I had this story arc about this supervillain who was basically had like the equivalent of super steroids, and was like basically taking old villains and juicing them to become bigger threats. And I got to a point where I offered the players a chance to find their lair, like this.
And they just didn't care.
They handed over the character to Aegis, the shield.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. Like, I wasn't super married to it, but I was like, there's a like that arc could have, like, we could have done another piece of that arc, which would have been like bust into his drug lab and fight him and all this. But I think their climax was, for them, was in order to capture the person who knew where this guy was, they uncovered that their high school baseball team was taking this drug.
Yeah.
And that's why their baseball team was undefeated. And so they wound up having this like big throwdown with the high school baseball team in the school, in the baseball diamond of the school. And I think that wound up as the climax for them, even though it wasn't supposed to be for me.
Yeah.
But I was like when they captured the one villain, she's like, I know where Cypher is. Like I can take you to him. And they were like, yeah, Aegis, you take, like, here you go. Like,
The ball is yours.
The ball is yours. And like, they were done with it. And I was like, okay, like, let it go. And so to Anja's point, the pitfall part is when you are a GM, and we've said this earlier in the episode, you can't hold anything too tightly. Because it's not up to you ultimately about what's important. Like, I can put things in front of players and I can make them interesting. But if they're going to find it to be interesting, or if they want to pursue it, is not a thing I can control.
Yep.
Right? So I think, yes, I think anytime you are holding on too tight to an idea for how a session ends, a solution for a mystery, whatever, like, you're in for heartbreak. Or you're going to inadvertently or directly railroad something. because when you are holding onto something tight, you start trying to shape the game for that thing to happen.
Yep.
And I was notorious for this when I was a younger GM. I just was really good at hiding it.
Mhm.
Like I would use like Schrodinger's decisions, right? Like where neither choice actually mattered, right? Because whichever one you picked is the way it's gonna go.
Mhm.
But like I held on to those things too tight because I was like, oh, what I want you to see is this cool climactic battle, rather than being like, well, I wonder where this goes. Like when I drop this thing on their laps, I wonder what happens next.
What was Rory's original question again? Because I saw you had a follow-up comment.
Yeah, the original question was, I wouldn't mind hearing about the pitfalls of trying to implement a 3X structure in an RPG. And then the clarification is, I guess what I meant was trying to write a 3X structure into your game, having a preconceived beginning, middle, and end. A lot of newer GMs discover the 3X structure and try to GM like frustrated novelists.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's I think exactly going back to what we were saying is you can write as a GM Act 1. You can write a little bit of Act 2, but by Act 2, the player should be shaping where Act 3 is going to go.
Yeah, I mean, you can create, like, maybe not before you start playing, but as play has gone on, you can create events to put pressure on their arcs.
Mhm.
And put
Yeah.
pressure on the arcs
Right.
to push them forward to see what happens. But it's hard to. I mean, you can drive things towards those ends. You can write linear adventures. Like that's a thing that happens,
Mhm.
which means you can write linear arcs too if you want.
Right, but you should never decide the ending of a thing. Because you don't know
you
how
can't-
players are going
You
to...
shouldn't decide the ending.
Right.
Like you should let their actions decide the ending.
Exactly.
So when you were trying to, if you're going to, okay, let's talk about this for a second. If you're going to actually write in a scenario, an arc, it's sort of like a campaign or a short campaign that has a 3-act structure in it, that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, that is a linear adventure.
Yep.
That just means that anytime there's a decision point that comes up, then it needs to be at the players have to make that choice, and it has to affect things going forward in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
And then you have to have really strong pointers that point players to the next thing that happens.
Right, but without controlling it.
Yeah, but if they don't do it though, then the game kind of can fall apart. So you really do need very strong hooks and pointers all along the way. I mean, we only think of strong hooks at the beginning, but you need strong stuff all along the way if you're going to write a linear adventure. This is coming from my experience writing for a lot of adventures.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you are writing a linear adventure and you're like, this adventure ends in this fight with the Earth Elemental, then the rest of that adventure writing has to point you in the direction of the Earth Elemental.
Yeah.
But I would say the real art form is it has to be flexible enough that the Earth Elemental is here at the end, but you can get at it from several paths within the story.
That is a version of that's branching structure.
Sure.
Which is fine. Like you can write it like that too. And usually for the larger adventures, it's a good idea. Actually, it'll probably come out. I'm not sure when it's coming out, but I just got done developing an adventure for one of our patrons, Jean Lorbert, a D&D adventure. That was actually really good. It was about a dragon, a red dragon that was in prison for a long time and had lost its evil alignment. And the whole adventure was about redemption, but getting this dragon from where it was to the elves in a lot of ways. He wanted to go. It's actually kind of dark. This dragon is depressed and wants to commit suicide because it doesn't know what to do with its life. It's a red dragon that's now like
no longer evil.
I've done terrible things.
Sure.
Right. But like your job is to help this dragon redeem itself. Like as the adventure goes along, as you're encountering a bunch of events, but there's a bunch of ways to get the dragon there.
Yeah.
Like there's multiple paths towards victory.
Right.
But you have a clear goal. This is a game that would take more than one session. It's definitely a story, not a scenario, like a one-time scenario. And it's got a lot of interesting mechanisms and events that lead into those choices.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really good example of that kind of design of like, here's a 3-act structure of like, here's the intro with the goal where you meet the dragon and the situation. Then you go through this whole bunch of different try-fail cycle type stuff.
Yep.
Which are actually, one of the interesting things is like, you can win the encounter and still mess up because it's about making the dragon feel redeemed.
Yep.
Or giving the dragon hope in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
and then there's a couple of climactic encounters that occur, or there's some climactic encounters that occur that then kind of sum up everything that's happened. And there's mechanics that actually support that all along the way. It's really rather well done. It needs some restructuring to make it easier to run, but it's a really cool adventure, and it's a very good example of how you can do that.
I think that's very cool. Yeah, I guess what I'm saying about writing the third act is I think you can have in mind what you think your climax can be. You can't have in mind how it concludes.
Yes, but you can set up the situation for saying like, well, here's a bunch of options for how it concludes.
Right, like you can bring the players to the layer of the Earth Elemental, but you can't decide like, well, what's going to happen is at the last minute the players are going to stop the Earth Elemental from opening a portal to the plane of Earth.
No, that's the question. Like,
well, that's frustrated writer, right?
Yeah, the question is, do the players stop the Earth Elemental?
And that's where you leave, and that's
why
where
we play to find out. That's the improvisational nature, even in the linear, flexible storytelling.
Exactly. Game. Right. So there is a point to which you can write and a point to which you have to let go. And this is where I say don't hold on to things too heavily. And I think what happens with a lot of newer GMs, and I definitely, when I was a newer GM, fell prey to this, was having this idea that I want to see this particular scene. Not what happens, but like I want to see this outcome in a game.
That's the problem.
And that's the thing where you're holding too tightly. Like you have to hold loose and say like, I want to see what will the players do to stop the Earth Elemental? Right? I don't know what they're going to do.
They can bring in a Lithid with them, I suppose.
They could sacrifice themselves. Somebody could jump on the rift or something and
I had to say a Lithid because somebody mentioned it.
Okay.
Sorry.
So anyway, yes. So I think you do actually write 3-act structures in role-playing games. I think the art is when do you stop writing and when do you let play to see what happened take over?
Well,
right?
I think it's always about situation creation.
Yeah, I do too.
It's never about dictating outcomes.
No, I mean I often will do. I like my rising action will be like, okay, there'll be this scene, and this scene. They're not scripted to what'll happen, but it's like it's this situation, this situation, this situation with what will they do, what will they do, what will they do.
If you're designing linearly, you can actually sort of figure out the most likely situations for outcome and be like, well, if this happens, then you go this way. If this happens, you go that way. If this happens, you go that way. That's the branching story structure that we're talking about.
Which I love.
And it exists in video games all the time, so it's not super hard to see it.
I also like ones, even if you're going to do super linear, I also like things like, depending on how well you do in previous scenes, it affects the outcome of the last scene. Like, if you did super well at searching the room of Knowles, you will find the ward that holds the Earth Elemental back.
Yeah. So
but maybe you don't find it.
Yeah, those are the things that help linear adventures become interesting, because there are like extra things to find or things that affect things later down the line.
Yes, because I think in a linear adventure, since you're not completely playing like open-ended to see what happens, like because you could go anywhere, you can't because you're in a linear adventure. Then what's interesting is what happens in each scene and how does it affect, especially the climactic scene.
That's the difference between a good linear adventure and a railroad.
Yeah.
We don't talk as much about linear stuff on this show because we don't.
Because we're dirty indie hippie gamers. But
that's not the games that we tend to talk about.
It's not, but I mean, I've certainly written like a few decades of them. Yeah, and like, it's not that we can't talk about it.
I've run tons of them too.
Right. Like, yep. I've written and run a bunch of them
with tons of fun being had by all playing them.
I was awesome at running linear. I was so awesome at running linear adventures. I was scared to run improv adventures when I first met you. Hence, Dangerous Space Joe.
So there we go. I suppose we should go to the conversation.
Yeah, let's go conversation. Thanks, everyone.
So what else is going on in our lives?
Yeah.
At least for 15 minutes before we go to the after show. 10, really.
Can I talk about our masks game?
Yeah, do it.
Yes.
So we are, I think we are one issue away from our, from the end of this arc. And it has been a time-traveling bonanza.
Oh, yeah.
The players they started in 2019, they wound up in the 25th century, they went back to the year 2000, and then they went to the year 1952. And like, I'm not all in one session, like in 2-3 sessions.
It was glorious.
But Bob discovered a secret about his character's father.
Yep.
That he did not know, that his father was once trying to be a superhero and was failing at it.
Oh.
Yep.
Which shed some light on their contentious relationship because he's a legacy.
Yep.
So he found out that his father actually took up the mantle after his aunt died, but like didn't
couldn't hack it.
Couldn't
hack it.
Could not hack it.
Didn't want to do it in the first place. His mom was forcing him to do it. Like,
yes.
You have to. Someone has to take up the mantle.
It painted a very different picture
yeah.
of your grandmother.
Yeah, there's going to be a conversation.
Yeah. It was good. But it was good overall. And Tony certainly discovered a lot more about his character. It was down to one of two ways it was going to end, and now I know which way it's going to end.
Nice.
Like, they got to a thing, and it was cool because Glenn had, earlier in the episode, unlocked their moment of truth. So we got down to this fight, and Glenn's like, I'm using my moment of truth right now. And, took over the narration of the scene, totally saved the day from the supervillain. And in doing so, also had enough advancements that they're changing their playbook.
Oh, nice.
So they're going to start next issue as the Janus.
That's cool.
Yeah. With new superpowers based on what happened. Like, it's so fucking comic book. Like, It's so good. Anyway, I did that. I'm also reading the Kirby run of the Eternals. It's a little harder than I thought it was going to be. 1973 comics aren't exactly super exciting. But Kirby artwork is amazing, and I love every page of those stupid comics because it's so damn Kirby. I don't even know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And I love Kirby's art like so much. Kirby's cosmic art is just makes my heart grow like 3 sizes bigger.
There you go.
All right, that's me. Chris?
So, new Veronica Mars is out there. Watch the first 3 episodes of that. It's really good. Really enjoy it. So, Veronica Mars for me was always great because it was a private eye show with a.
Sure.
I enjoy Kristen Bell as Veronica Mars, and it did a thing between the private eye thing and the teenage high school drama thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's doing the private eye thing versus the I'm an adult trying to have my life on top of that thing. So it's got the relationship side going on with Veronica and some of her friendships and whatnot, and the fact that she's a little older than she was, which is really fun. So I enjoy that. That's on Hulu. Go get it. City of Gears is awesome.
Isn't it?
Bob brought that over on Friday. We played it twice. Man, that
Nice.
game is so much fun. I'll let Bob talk about more about it in a little bit. Like I mentioned, I played Terraforming Mars and Tiny Towns at Gathering Game. Those games are great. Like Tiny Towns, you would love Tiny Towns, Phil.
Yeah.
It's a great little game.
What kind of game is it?
So the way that the game plays is that you have a little 16 square 4x4 board in front of you, and there are a series of cards out in front of everybody that have building types on them, and they have a pattern of materials, squares.
Okay.
And there's cubes that are out there. They're resource cubes, and on your turn, somebody calls out a resource and takes that cube, and everybody else also takes that cube and has to place it on their board. When you have created the pattern that's on one of those cards, you clear your cubes, and you put that type of house on your tiny town in one of the spots where your cube was.
Which now alters where you can place things on the board.
Yes, because that house is now in the way.
Yes.
The game ends when no one anywhere can put any more cubes on their tiny town, and then you score points based on what is the special abilities on all the cards.
Oh, interesting.
And the cards change. The game plays in about 30 minutes. You're never bored because it's always somebody calling.
And then everybody having to do something.
Yep. And there's like different, except for I think there's one building that's the same. I think it's the cottage, it's the blue one. Every other one has like 4 cards, so there's always something randomly different, and there are different combinations.
It sounds interesting.
It's a brilliant, lovely game. You would like it, I think.
I think I would.
Okay, so that's that game. I got Keyforge, the 2-player starter set. The game is actually really neat. I like it.
So it begins.
I don't like building decks.
Yeah.
I like playing card games.
Yeah.
So that's really fun. And this one's interesting because you're not really trying to kill the other person. You're trying to build a thing before the other person builds a thing.
Interesting.
You're basically trying to hinder them from building their thing while
Yeah.
trying to build your own.
I actually probably would like that.
Yeah.
then.
So there's some interesting choices to make. Also, you have 3 types of cards in your deck, and the way that you decide what cards you can play and utilize that are in your board are you have to pick one of those 3 factions when you start your turn.
Interesting.
Because then the other ones you can't do anything with.
Okay.
Right? So
Yeah,
that's,
Mo says Keyforge is a race, not a battle.
yes, it's a race, not a battle. It's
Yeah,
exactly
that's
what it is.
interesting.
That's really good. And I've been studying up on Twitch and streaming. Like, as you can tell, we have a new overlay.
Yeah, I'm digging.
There's also, I don't really want anyone to do this, but there's an emoticon that you can get if you're a subscriber. You're not subscribed right now. I was just playing around with it and testing it. It might be 2 pandas. They're adorable.
Right. But don't subscribe yet.
Don't
because
subscribe.
we're going to have you subscribe to the new URL when we
Yes.
switch everything over.
Yes, that'll be the thing. And that'll probably be the first emoticon if I can talk everybody else into it when we get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've been studying up on that stuff. Also, we have, I didn't realize this, like, I'm an Amazon Prime person, so I have, like, the upgraded Twitch subscription,
Sure.
which means our episodes are on there for 2 months, not 2 weeks. Which I also exported a bunch of them to YouTube, and I will start
Oh,
putting them
sweet.
up.
Good.
Because Rob used to yell at me about that. So
Oh, did you get called in the boss's office?
I mean, he just was like, you should really like 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, he's like, you should really export those to YouTube. I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So I did it the other day.
By the way, if I'm correct, later this week, The Boys.
Yes, you can. I can also highlight my episodes. Mo just said I actually put up a highlight of us doing Definition Panda from 2 weeks ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
The Boys is coming to. It will drop on Amazon. Did you ever read The Boys?
Did it drop yet?
No, I think it's the 26th.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah.
I'll be watching it.
I gotta watch Stranger Things first, then The Boys.
Bob.
Yeah, so
With my voice.
Phil talked about the Masks game, and that game is glorious. It's just the combination of the background we did for the city, the story that Phil concocted to the idea for the story he wanted to lead us into, and then the 3 of us playing our characters and interacting as kids and teens getting into trouble and stuff. It's just been amazing. So looking forward to more of that someday after we put it down for a while and move on to something else briefly.
Yeah, we're going to play. I think we're gonna play Operators.
Yeah.
Next, but we're gonna play it in the John Wick universe.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do the High Table, the Continental,
Nice.
all of that stuff.
All of that stuff. So yeah, I came over to Chris's and played City of Gears, which is a really clever game. I got it on Kickstarter, and I'm glad I did because it's a load of fun. Basically, you have these tiles, which are city locations, and you place them face down in a 3x3 grid for the base layout. And then each player's got a factory tile that attaches to that from one of the spots. They have like these entry points. Each card's got an entry point on it, and you matched it up with your factory tile. And you have these little bots, and you move around the board. And when you move your bot onto a tile, you flip it over, and you get victory points for discovering what that tile is. And then they have things that happen when on your subsequent turns you can activate those tiles to do stuff. And the object is to go run around and make connections with these gears to connect your tiles together, and have your bots on the board in different places. And at the end of the game, you score points for each tile that you own. And to own it, you have to have the most combination of gears and bots on it. And then it's victory points. You collect them up, and whoever has the most wins. But it's clever in its implementation. And there's an expansion that was Kickstarter only called the Juggernaut. You put the Juggernaut tile out, and this big giant bot figure that they have. If you are on the Juggernaut tile, you can activate the Juggernaut and stomp around the board and stomp on other people's bots. It's loads of fun and good times.
Components are adorable.
Yeah, I brought over the Girl Genius card game, which I think is super clever too.
It's cool. Yeah.
I enjoy that. Other than those things, work has been the last 2 weeks keeping me on my toes. I have been we knew the summer was going to be interesting because one of our key members of the team who gets a lot of account work done is out on maternity leave. And the replacement for the person that we lost from the team is new and is still learning. So we're kind of 2 people short in a way. And then there's vacations. One guy's on vacation this week, so we're down another person. And just tons of work is coming in. And I had a conversation with my therapist about this because when we started thinking about this part of the year coming up, within the last month and a half, a bunch of us at work were all like, "Oh, this summer's gonna suck. It's gonna suck hard." And I had a conversation with my therapist about it. I said, I'm trying not to think of it as it's gonna suck because you create a self-fulfilling prophecy when you go in with negativity like that. And if I just walked in there every day, well, today's gonna be a shit show. Granted,
it's gonna be a shit show.
On our Slack channel, I said shit show day 2, but my mental attitude going into the last 2 weeks has been, this is going to be difficult. There's going to be a lot of work, but try and be, as neutral to positive about it as possible. And I've been doing a pretty good job of not getting super negative about it. There are a couple of moments where I was a little frustrated by a few things and I went off a little bit, but overall, it's been pretty good. So it's challenging me, which is good because I think I needed it. That's what's been going on with me.
All right. Well, let's do some Patreon shout-outs and get out of here. Sound good?
Sound good.
All right, patrons: Brandon Barnes, the old school DM, Sean Merwin, the Mad Wizard, Troy Sandlin, Will Doyle, Zach Goins, Chris Constantine, Cindy Moore, Eric Mengi, Eric Simon, Nico Froelich, Andrew Dempsey, Waxberg, Brett, just Brett,
Chris Steele.
Thank you. Curtis Y. Takahashi, Danielle Thomas, Dennis Malloy, David Chrisman, JT Evans, Jared Rasher, Jen Pixelscapes Gange, and Gagny. Sorry, Jen. Joseph Peralta and Mike Amer. Thank you so much for being our patrons.
And thank everyone for listening.
If you are free Tuesday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. the Queen's time, you're welcome. Come join us live on Twitch, where you can chat with our other listeners in the awesome chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
If you can't make it to the live show, check out our podcast each week wherever you get your podcasts. And take a listen to some of the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Bone, Stone, and Obsidian, Pandas Talking Games, Cypher Speak with Darcy and Troy once Troy gets back, The Gnome Cast, the Wednesday Evening Podcast All-Stars, Zhang Yu Hustle, She's a Super Geek, and Bonus Experience. You can and should also check out our sibling podcasts, Tabletop Bellhop, The Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming MBS.
After you have laid out all of your arcs and are ready to advance to the next storyline, leave us some feedback. You can reach us directly via email at mmp@misdirectedmark.com. Check out our awesome Facebook group.
High five.
Ding!
High five. Good job.
Or hit us up on Twitter. The show in the network is at MisdirectedMark. He's at Robert M. Everson. He's the Light 101.
That's
and
me.
I am DNA Phil.
Woo!
Hey, everybody. If you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaigns. MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. She's a Super Geek is at patreon.com/Sesgeek.
That's any nominated.
She's a Super Geek. Zhang Yu Hustle is at patreon.com/Zhang Yu Hustle. And last but certainly not least, Bonus Experience is at patreon.com/Bonus Experience. Patrons of MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, the Pandas Talking Games bonus outtakes, and other special releases.
Well, this has been another edition of the Misdirected Mark podcast, a production of Misdirected Mark Productions, which is also the media arm of Encoded Designs. Kali Ma, Kali Ma, Kali Ma.
Mic drop. We out! Oof.